Hello, hey, and welcome to my tent, a place to hear life experiences, different opinions, a range of journeys, and a viewpoint different than our own. A place to challenge our own thoughts, a space to learn a little bit, and I promise some fun along the way. I believe we're better when we let a range of people into our tents, so welcome to mine. Did you know that our health is encompassed by way more than just food and fitness? Did you know I'm a health coach? What is a health coach? I can tell you. I work with individuals and groups to look at all aspects of life that help make us truly well. I have structured programs to help you create realistic, challenging but achievable, and long-term transformations that span long past our time working together. I help you take a multifaceted approach to your health, ranging from food, fitness, relationships, work-life balance, financial health, gratitude and joy, creativity, career, and more. If you are looking to make a health transformation, visit my website in the show notes or email me, sarah@sarahjohnstonwellness.com. Cheers to good health. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you.
Good.
This is so funny. Where are you based?
Charlottesville, Virginia.
Okay. We moved to Phoenix almost 2 years ago from Chicago. So I'm thinking I'll never be cold. Like I am freezing when it's 70. I have a blanket. I have a sweater on. I am so cold.
Yeah, I have friends who live on Oahu and they joke about, I'm like, because whenever I visited back and forth and when I was a kid and stuff, and I'm like, why do you have a fireplace? And she goes, well, in the winter when it gets cold. And I'm like, and how cold does it get? And she goes, it's down to 65. And I'm like,
freezing. It's so cold. I'm telling you. But it is so nice to finally hop on with you. I'm excited to chat. Let me just make sure I have also my notes. Because you have a very fascinating background. And then what you've done with that, I think, is just so cool. And how you've taken, I think, so much of your life and your life story and your experiences, and you now use this in your own coaching practice and how you're mentoring and doing all these awesome things. So, everyone, we're talking to Andrea Johnson today. I know I have the Johnston, but if possible, I'd love for you also just to say hi quickly, and then we can dive in to growing up for you, if that is a good place to start.
oh, we can start wherever you want.
Fascinating. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Andrea Johnson, and I was at MEC before I got married. And but quite frankly, people kept saying to me, well, is it Johnston or is it Johnson? And I'm like, well, do you hear me say in Johnston? I don't know.
Yeah. Gosh, now I feel you.
Yeah. So, hello, everyone. I am so thrilled to be here, and I love the name of your show, and I love what it represents. And I am my 3-word mantra when I meet with people is spunky, welcoming, and wise, because you're going to get sass. It's just not going to show up. It's just who I am. But I just want everybody to feel welcomed. I want to be a place of welcome. And I have learned to embrace the fact that I've been around the sun enough times that I have a little wisdom. And so when you talk about using my life experiences in the work that I do, I don't know how else to do it, Sarah.
Yep. I think that's the biggest thing. And that's why you align so well to this show, because what I always say on here is we can only have one experience, ours, and we can only have a certain set of things that we come across or go through or live. And it's so important, I think, to listen to other people's stories and hear what they have to say, because if anything, it gives us a little bit of insight maybe into who that person is, or why people are who they are. And so much of this, I think, is drawn from your background, both growing up, because you kind of grew up internationally and on a base, I believe, in Korea.
Everybody thinks that. So I was joking last night with some ladies at church. I said, yeah, when I tell people I grew up in Korea, they say, oh, was your dad in the military? Because that is like, everybody thinks that, especially in the 70s and 80s, was such a huge, because it was the base of UN operation. The base of UN operations. And so it was huge. And then if I let it go, I just say, well, no. Oh, was your dad an engineer? I'm like, no. No, my
Also
parents
nice.
were missionaries. So it's like there's like several careers that you think about moving around a lot. And turns out I married the son of an engineer who totally got the whole moving around a lot thing.
Yep.
But neither one of us are military. But we went on the military base a lot.
Yep. Yep.
We did because
Yep.
it was just that was how we could see America, when we were
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So growing up, that's not maybe because now you're back based in Charlottesville, a completely different world than where you are now. So you were exposed to a lot of different cultures and diversity. And um, a question I have for you as well is how did that like look and feel as someone that would probably stick out in a place like that, growing up and getting those experiences? How did that shape you growing up, and how you were kind of learning to view the world, and how does that show up now in how you live and practice and teach?
Well, how it shows up now is wonderful. How it showed up then was a mess
Mhm.
because I was 7 when we moved, and I like to tell people that by the time I was 21, I had moved 17 times.
Oh my gosh.
And so I didn't feel a lot of stability, even though my family life was stable. I had a mom, a dad, a sister, we had a house, but I moved I was born when my dad was in college. We moved to seminary. My sister was born when he was in seminary. We moved to Wyoming. Then we moved back to Georgia and to Texas and then to Korea and then back and forth. And then I went to college in 3 different towns. And I mean, it's just, you become kind of the thing that you're used to.
Yep.
And so even just being in Charlottesville, kind of looking back and saying, oh my goodness, in June, we will have been in this house 12 years. I think that's the longest I've lived in any one place ever.
Yeah.
And
Probably
ever.
by a lot. Yeah.
And I'm 57, and just looking back on myself. I love personal growth stuff and I love personality tests and I'm a junkie and I know my disc, I know my Enneagram, I know my human design, I know all of that. But as an Enneagram 6, I'm always looking for stability and
Mhm.
I'm always looking for safety. And moving that much and being in a culture that I didn't understand with other people who seemed to get it
Yeah.
was very difficult. A lot of my missionary kid friends were either born there or had been there since they were babies. And I showed up in 3rd grade and it was like, what is this world? And I really didn't handle it well. So for me, the one thing that was safe and secure for me was food.
Mhm.
And I began early on sneaking food, binge eating, etc. But it's a very kind of safe way to do that, at least for a while. And so I stayed out of trouble mostly. There was a huge expatriate community there. So there are ways in which I had yeah, I'm a white woman, so I am privileged, but over there even I had, even though we were poor missionaries who couldn't hardly afford our heating oil in the winter, we had a beach cabin. They'd set up like communities where we could go and be together and experience things that were just as if I was in the Adirondacks or something in the United
Yeah.
States. And so there are things that I look back on, I did not appreciate, I did not understand. And I kind of walked away from them when I went to college because I wanted to fit in. But that was the thing for me. So by the time I hit college, I was full blown bulimia and depression and just was looking for ways to fit in. So I didn't always handle it well. But the growth that comes when you're willing to do it and work through all of that stuff, now I look back and I know for a fact that in the work that I did in my career before I became a full-time speaker trainer coach, I was in medical centers where I needed to be able to listen to someone speaking English in a different language and know how to tell everybody else what they meant.
Yeah.
And growing up and going to school with kids from 65 different countries helps you do that. Learning to communicate with other people in their language that is the second hardest language for English speaking people to learn,
Yeah.
Korean, is a good way to figure out how to actually get the communication across. So in my work today, all of those experiences that seemed, I don't know, mundane or silly or scary even have kind of shaped who I am today and make it so that I can be welcoming, so that I can be a little more. I don't always have the right answer. And I think that's part of being wise is understanding that
Mhm.
you just use what you have and you apply it well. And if if not, then you learn from somebody else and you move forward
Yeah.
and grow together.
You ask the questions. And that's
Yes.
one of the biggest things my dad taught me. And he is the big stem for the name and the reason why this podcast is what it is named. And that's the bring people into the tent. If you don't know the
Yeah.
answer, it's okay that you're not good at everything. And it's okay that you don't have the answers. And I would rather, in the way that I approach life, someone to say, you know what, I don't know, but I can ask, or
Yes.
I do know someone that may be able to give you that answer. And
Right.
I really love what you're saying too about the retrospect. Hindsight's always 2020, and it's sometimes really hard, especially in adolescence as you're a teenager. Those years in general they're just tough. They're tough.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at it now and able to be a coach and a speaker and a leader and helping other people work through this, that brain switching almost of I can listen to a lot of different languages. I can listen to what this person is maybe saying and ask those questions or get to that clarity point where you can actually then really help them because
Right.
you've done that for your entire life. And I think it's incredible that that's become one of your gifts is this thing that like maybe wasn't the best and the greatest and the most fun for you as a youth
Yeah.
or adolescence, but now it's helping you help others because you can pick up on things and hear
Mhm.
things that a lot of other people probably can't. So
Mhm.
well, if we could, because I know you've talked about this too on your site and your bios and whatnot, how your journey with food has shown up
Mhm.
in your life and how that became a source of control and comfort for you, because eventually you also ended up having surgery, having
Mhm.
bypass.
Mhm.
So could you walk us through that walk of life and that journey and
Yeah.
what that looked like for you?
So I will say up front, genetically, my family were just predisposed. Our bodies are like amazing things that will store energy, and mine does it well, and so does everybody in my family.
Yeah.
If we need to stick out a really hard winter, we're hang with us, you know. But we're short too, so little Winnie the Poohish, and as a kid growing up internationally, in the 70s and 80s, we didn't have as much obesity or even we had zero body acceptance, right?
Yeah.
But obesity was very uncommon. And so for me to even be chubby, we were always waiting for the growth spurt, always waiting for something else to happen. And then with my own relationship with food, finding it's the only place where I felt truly accepted because I also grew up in, like I said, a missionary home, but it was Southern evangelical culture where girls are not the leaders. Girls are they're not supposed to be outspoken. They're not supposed to be the one that kind of bosses the room around. I was called bossy. I was told not everybody wants to hear my opinion. And, here I am, somebody's
Yeah.
asking me for my opinion. And so all of those things combined with the safety issues and the not understanding meant that um, the things that I had available to me, I could have gone out, my friends, there's no drinking age. There's no, prescription drugs were not a thing. You just go to the little store and you ask for the thing because they just didn't have that problem
Yep.
of people abusing. And so my friends took advantage of all of that. And I didn't because I was scared. I was like, I was the good girl. And so walking through those things and understanding the only way I knew how to deal with stress, because mom didn't know how to tell me how to deal with stress. All my mother knew was, I'm going to send you to school with the food that will help you lose weight, which is a half a tuna fish and mustard sandwich, a boiled egg, and a tab. And I did what other kids would do and have done. And probably, I know my kids done this. I pilfered change and every once in a while, a little money out of her purse in
Mhm.
order because in Korea, we had these Korean ladies that cooked in our cafeteria and they made the best. I mean, the best noodles and the best, so it's like, I just would go and it was like a quarter, but I would eat my lovely meal that my mother
Eat your
sent me to
tuna fish
school with.
mustard sandwich.
And I still got my bowl of ramen. And, I mean, but it meant that I had something that I controlled. It
Mhm.
meant that I had something that wasn't necessarily going to hurt me immediately. I was not a purger, just a binger. But when I hit college and I didn't have my support group around me, I didn't have my quote extended family of missionary aunts and uncles and friends that I'd grown up with since I was in third grade. That's when I really I hit kind of a rock bottom, if you will, because I got so depressed. I always made good grades just because I happen to be smart, and that's also very intimidating for men. So don't do
Yeah.
that either, right?
Yeah.
So um, I would spend all the days that I could in my room with the curtains pulled and a big flannel gown, eating Bluebell ice cream. And this is in Houston, Texas, and it really, I just couldn't do it anymore. I knew that something was going to break, and so I started looking for answers, and lo and behold, a commercial on the television
Of
for
course.
this, yeah, Raider Institute. And I put myself at 20. Well, I turned 20 in the hospital, 12-week inpatient program for bulimia and depression.
Oh my gosh.
And it was, nobody really understood at the time. I mean, they knew about Karen Carpenter, so they knew about eating disorders, but they didn't really understand that just because because I wasn't a purger, so I wasn't skinny. I was well overweight. And being willing to say, I'm not handling life well,
Yeah.
being willing to say, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I can't handle life on life's terms. But it was the first time people said, even if you can't handle something on life's terms, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It
Mhm.
means you don't have the tools you need. So let's give you some tools. And it was the first time somebody gave me tools like gentle eating or deciding I'm only going to eat this much food. But a lot of it was mindfulness. A lot of it was understanding who I am, understanding that it's okay to be unique and different, having my own opinion about things. And when you release a lot of those assumptions, and I talk about assumptions, beliefs, and conditioning, when you release a lot of those, it frees you up to not need to soothe. Like if you don't have anything to soothe, then you don't, I mean, it's not like I did, and I'm very disciplined and I can lose a lot of weight, but I got some tools, and then you alluded to it. I got married, and my husband's a pastor, and went through church split, and they tried to tell me it was my fault.
Yeah.
And I look back on that. Even at the time, I was like, "This is not my fault," but I didn't know how to distance myself. I was 27, 28, and that's when I shot way back up. And my mother was then diagnosed with breast cancer, and I worked at the Johns Hopkins Oncology Center. So I knew that obesity was a contributing factor to many types of cancer. I also couldn't get pregnant, and I couldn't figure out any of that. And I knew that obesity has an effect on your fertility. And I still was in the mindset that being a mom was the end goal of my life because I was still a part of that, a mindset. And so I told my husband, I said, I think I might need to do this. And he said, whatever you need to do. Right. And it is the best tool. This 19 years ago is the best
Yep.
tool that I've ever used, best tool that I've ever taken a hold of, because it was a tool that restricts me from being able to do other things. I haven't had a soda in 20 years. I eat very little sugar. I still have comfort things. I still
Yep.
soothe myself. I have a long week. I have a big week. Tonight, I get to participate in an Oprah thing. And it's a lot. So it's like my brain is like, and I ate a piece of lovely 9-grain bread with some peanut butter on it because I give myself things now because I know that I need to soothe a little bit, but at the same time, I just have to acknowledge that the feelings are so big, they're popping out my head.
Yeah.
And, but being willing to say, these are things that having gastric bypass surgery is no joke, right? It is not an easy fix. I went through 7 years of counseling, and when I was done, my counselor walked me through all of it. And he said, I have never seen anybody do anything more courageous than what you did.
Yeah.
And part of it is you have to be willing to change everything about the way you relate to food if you want to do that. And so I don't professionally work with people who are having gastric bypass, but I mentor people. I've had quite a few friends and employees or staff members who have done that. And I walk with them and I encourage them. Whenever I talk about it, I say it is a great tool, but that is all it is. It is not a magic pill. And if you don't get mental help and emotional help for why you got there in the first place, then you will get back there.
Yep.
And you hear people talk about that. So I work on things all the time, and which is another reason why it's like I have to use my story because I have to learn consistently in order to be able to turn around and share.
Yeah. And I think it also gives you like street cred when you're like, I've been there. And the reason why I feel like I am good at what I do is because
Yeah.
you've used a lot of this on yourself as well. And I think something that's so important to also note is, especially you've already kind of alluded to this, is, and I think it's better now, but it still kind of happens, is like women are meant to be quiet and sit back. Um, and when we have these, because I have this kind of similar personality
Oh
where
yeah,
I'm
it still
loud
kind
and
of happens
boisterous and
all
I'm
the time,
opinionated,
every day. Yeah.
but also that's a catch-22 sometimes, because I also can fall into the camp of, and I actually took your, we touched on this. I took your the quiz on like getting your non-negotiable, all this stuff. We'll
Oh,
walk through
good.
that.
Yeah.
But I can also tend to be like, I can do it on my own. I got this.
Mhm.
I'm independent. I'm strong.
Mm.
But a huge thing is sometimes we need to ask for help, and we need to ask for help from other people, whether that's a medical
Yes.
professional that performs a surgery on you, whether that's a group, whether that's a therapist, whether that's someone
Yes.
else that needs to help you walk along that journey. And it doesn't mean we're broken, or it doesn't mean it's our fault. It just means
Mhm.
that I'm a believer that those people are there for a reason, and it is to help
Oh,
people
yeah.
that need the help. And so it can be hard sometimes, I think, especially as really independent, strong women, to also say, like, I'm going to ask for this help, and
Yeah.
and to just let that happen with open arms. But I think it translates very well into how you work with people, because I did take your, I think it's a quiz, or a
It's a core values exercise. Yeah.
questionnaire,
Yeah.
and it was really interesting because I think that also starts to help show people, okay, what do you value most? What are you actually valuing and not putting attention on? That was I
Honoring.
was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, Sarah."
Yeah.
And what are the non-negotiables? And I think if it is something like changing your life, whether that be career change, health change, you're going to have to look at those negotiables, non-negotiables, and like what you actually value most. So can you walk through that kind of core value piece of your business and you, and talk about it and how that works into your coaching and your leadership?
Oh, yes. I'm so excited you've already done it.
I know,
That's just
because I was last night. It was just, it's always
oh,
interesting
if
because
you started it last night, you've only started your journey. So
I know it is just really interesting though to sit and take some time to actually think about those things, because the first question, I mean, like, what would other people say you are, right? So
Mhm.
I actually really had to think about that, because I'm like, am I just like popping into my brain what I think other people think I am,
Mhm.
or what people would actually say? So it's a really good exercise.
Mhm.
But yeah,
And
chat through that and chat what that looks
well, and both of those answers are valid.
like. Mhm.
Right? Because there's you're looking for filters. You're looking for ways that you are listening to other people or imagining what other people say, et cetera. But so that everybody knows what we're talking about, we'll go back to the beginning. You've heard of the Franklin Covey system, have you? Okay.
My dad
So
wrote me a Post-it with all of this, with all of it on it when I started my first job, and I still have that Post-it.
okay. Well, I still have my governing values sheet.
Oh my
I
god.
mean, it's literally got 6 holes in it. It's laminated with packing tape. And I did this when in 1995. So it's
Yep.
almost 30 years. And my top goal or my top governing value, and this is, I take it a little bit nuanced and a little bit deeper, but the governing values that I started with, the very top one was freedom.
Mm.
Now, at my little 27-year-old self said, freedom from a job, anybody else. I've freedom of money and I have no job. It's just like,
Yeah.
now it's like, oh yeah, that's really nice, Andrea.
Yeah,
Um,
good. That's realistic. Yep, yep, yep.
that's where it started when I was sort of, this is when I was in grad school, right when I was getting married. And I was like, I need to know what are the things. And I had this in my Franklin planner so that every time I flipped the page to the next page, this went with me. And I
Mhm.
kept them in front of me to look. And there are things like having self-control or honesty and transparency, friendship, nature, creativity. Those are all good things. And, as we age and sometimes we might say, these are my governing principles or something. I kind of let them fall, to the wayside. And I got a job and and I was a pastor's wife, and then we adopted, and I hit this point where my mother was going in hospice. We were losing her to breast cancer. And I said, I have to figure out what I stand for. And through that process of creating intentional optimism, one of my friends that I'd known, whose dad was in the Air Force in Korea, since I was 17, said, have you ever considered John Maxwell? Because I said, I don't want to manage people anymore. I want to help them grow and I want to help them lead. And so if you've not heard of John Maxwell, those of you listening, he's kind of an international leadership guru. And so at the time, I went ahead and got certified as a Maxwell certified DISC consultant, speaker, trainer, and coach. And so I use a lot of his things and I start with DISC with people. But one of the things in the getting certified through the coaching program was we had to go back to our core values and we had to start looking through them because and I actually do this more than a lot of Maxwell people. They usually focus on communication. But I'm like, you have got to layer your core values in there because if you don't, then what are you communicating? And how do you, it's like you can see patterns, but why are the patterns there? Right. It's like I even said earlier, it's like I needed to know why, right? It's like I could see what I want to do, but why do I want to do it? And so when I define core values for people, I make a very clear distinction between the things that are outside us and the things that are inside us.
Mhm.
So businesses right now, it's a big touch word. It's a zing zing. It's like these are our business core values, and I like to say those are more of a mission and vision. And I want to make sure that whatever organization I'm in or you're in, wherever you're paying attention or participating, that your personal core values, which are your principles, priorities, and your own, like you said, non-negotiables that guide your actions, these foundational convictions that allow you to kind of not navigate these complex situations, wind blow, whatever waves, while keeping your identity and authority at the forefront, right?
Mhm.
Allowing Sarah to stay Sarah, allowing Andrea to remain Andrea. How can I be in a situation where a business has these core values and mine are these and have them still be honored? And so that's the work that I do. And that's kind of how I take it down. So when I do workshops for this, I always start out with, if you tell me that your core values are faith, family, and country, we're going to have a problem because I'm going to push back every single time. Now, I'm going to say your core values are going to show up in your faith. Your core values are going to show up in your family and in how you relate to your country or whatever it is that you like, but they are invisible. But they make a difference. Like if somebody tell me the one that you think you've not been honoring of
Wait, let
yours.
me I wrote it all down.
And it better not be family or
I'm like, I definitely had those on my list. So one of my core values is my health. And so that encompasses physical, emotional, mental, and
Mhm.
forever on this journey of not trying to burn myself out. Right. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
a toddler and a wife and a partner and friend. And
Mhm.
um, I have a tendency to say yes when I have the time, but not the space.
Yeah.
And that's sort of dishonoring that health piece where, sure, like physically there is the time, great, but like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like I don't have it in me.
Mhm.
But my like tendency to want to care for others and put others first, which I do also think is a good thing. My empathetic side, my
Mhm.
connection side can
Mhm.
overpower that sometimes where I'm like, yes. And then I'll be like, why did I say yes? Like, why did I do that? And so it goes against that core value in me of like putting my health at the
Mhm.
forefront. Because if I'm not
Mhm.
healthy, I can't show up for other people or things that
Mhm.
I want to do. And so I dishonor that sometimes by essentially overscheduling.
Well, and some of those are valid. And so just listening to you, if we were in a coaching session, I would probably say something like that stuff that you're letting overshadow that and that you're saying yes to is there's a core value in there too.
Mhm.
There's an empathy in there. And we sometimes our core values will overshadow each other.
Yep.
One will rise to the top in a different situation than another. And I would even say that it's probably a stronger one because you are empathetic for others. The problem is that the real core value that's being dishonored there is they're not having empathy for you in the areas that you need. So the
Mhm.
other piece about core values is that they're reciprocal.
Yep.
We don't want respect for me. I never want respect for me without wanting respect for you. Otherwise, I'm just a narcissist.
Right.
And so, for me, when that freedom turned out to be what I would call freedom of thought or autonomy of thought. And looking all the way back to my 2-year-old self with my lip out, and my hands on my hips, and my mother saying, I told you not. And I'm like, don't tell me what to do.
Yep.
All the way back there, when we look back at those things, we can say, oh, that's how I was wired. No
Yep.
wonder it bothers me. No wonder it would bother me. My mother would say, "Don't you love this picture?" Well, how am I supposed to respond to that if I don't love it?
Right. No.
And so, yeah, you can't. So my husband even used to say, "Wouldn't you agree that?" And
Mm,
it's like, no. And we met in seminary in grad school, right? So Saturday morning, good conversation is a thorny theological conversation. It's like, what did you think about this? Or how would you apply this from there? And so he's learned, and we've learned together as I've discovered this about myself, that what he'll say is, what do you think about this rather than wouldn't you agree? And so when we understand what our core values are, then it comes up to that other thing you mentioned here is you didn't actually say the word, but the boundaries become very clear. The boundaries are internal, right? And so for many people, saying yes is easy and saying no is hard, but understanding that the boundary might is there's going to be a certain amount of, let me put it this way. I have 3/4 of an acre here in Virginia,
yep.
but right up on the road, I planted beautiful forsythia bushes, not realizing I planted them too close. So anybody who walks on my road, which we're out in the country, we can see the Blue Ridge Mountains, it's beautiful, but there's no sidewalk. So they walk inside my forsythia bushes on my property. That's okay. I let them come on my property. It's a boundary. It's okay to cross. They don't walk up to my house and walk in my door.
Right.
Right. Right? They're not in like they grabbing something out of my fridge. I mean, they're going to have a big surprise if that happens. Of course,
Right.
first my dog will lick them as a beagle. She will just be happy they're there. But the rest of us will not be. And I don't have to open the door when someone knocks on it, right? So understanding that there are some of our boundaries that are okay to be out here and they can be a little flexible and it's fine, and it's still the boundary line of my house and my property, but there's a hard line at the door, right? And my doorbell's broken, so they have to knock. but,
There you go. That's one way to do
but
it.
yeah, but you being able to say this is and sometimes, well, let me put it this way. For those of us who we find it hard to say no about things, it's figuring out where's that outer boundary that we can say yes, 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 and then where's the inside where we have to say no. Because no longer is it benefiting you for me to say yes. It's actually a detriment to both of us. And my desire is for both of us to thrive. Right. So, and if you're going to go to be healthy, it's like if my desire is for me to be healthy and you to be healthy, and for me to be able to show up in a way that's mentally healthy for you and to give you what you need, I have to draw this harder line. And so then we take it out to like strategic pieces, like how would you calendar? Right. I'm fully booked in May for podcast interviews. And I'm enjoying it and I love telling my story. But anybody that books with me now is booking in June and July and August.
Yep.
And because I know I can't do 8 in a day. I know that I only have 3 to give or
Yeah.
2, depending on because I have coaching clients and I have workshops that I'm doing and
Life.
I'm
Yeah. You have
speaking
a
to them.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have my sons taking standard of learning tests this week. I mean, so it's just like, but I think understanding that about ourselves, it gives us, Sarah, an authority that we were lacking, right? So when I talk to leaders about it, I say, this is where you find the authority to lead. Because a lot of people find themselves in a career situation where they might have responsibility, but no authority. And
Mm,
that's middle management. And sometimes that happens in our families. Really strong several generation families, you're right in the middle. You might have responsibility with no authority. So it translates everywhere, right? But when
yep.
we understand who we are and we understand our non negotiables, which I call my core values, then I have the authority to say, this is what I'm going to do. Some people are really good at this. It blows my mind. But my
I know.
sister's always been one of those people. She's like, you can come along if you want, but this is what I'm doing. And I'm like,
Yeah. And you're like, whoa, you really just said that? What?
but aren't we going to decide this together?
Yeah.
She's like, well, no, I don't, you can do what you want. It doesn't bother me. But
What does that feel like to be unbothered?
isn't it?
Like,
It's just crazy.
and my husband's like that.
Yeah.
I think it also really layers into DISC and your Enneagram
Yes.
and your type, because my husband and I actually did, we were very, very lucky. One of our closest family friends, I've known him for 35 years, is a minister. He married us.
Oh,
And he had us go through like a day of like, I don't know, pre-wedding stuff. And we
yeah,
did
yeah.
our, what's like the ENFJ? Uh,
Oh, the Myers Briggs.
yes,
Hmm.
polar,
Yeah.
not one thing. But I think that layers into what those core values end up being. And I think
Hmm.
what's really interesting, whether you're collaborating with a colleague or a friend, partner, brother, sister,
Mhm.
understanding that their core values might not be yours.
Oh, please understand that.
How can that, and I even see it, I think that's a great example with you, like with you and your husband of like,
Yeah,
what do you think versus wouldn't you agree? Um,
right.
I think that's an important piece too, relating it also back to boundaries when someone sets one, to understanding like that's truly what they need. Like that's
Yeah.
not, I don't understand that boundary because like I wouldn't necessarily care about that. That's not something that
Mhm.
bothers me or I feel like I need, but that's what they need. And I
Yeah.
think that that's a big disconnection piece sometimes when, especially boundaries are set because people can get angry about those. People cannot understand them or people
Mhm.
can feel like it's, them being attacked. When in reality, it's just like, no, like I had to say no because my brain's about to explode
Mhm.
and turn into gelatin if I
Or I'm
do,
gonna pass out on the floor
yeah, if
or
I do one more thing today.
yeah.
Um, and so I think it's a really important piece to also take a step back sometimes when interacting with anyone of like what they're saying and what they're doing or what they're saying that they need most of the time has nothing to do with me. Like it has,
I'm gonna say it like all the
oh,
time. It has nothing to do with
yeah,
me. And
unless you
that's
like punch someone in the face and they get mad at you,
yeah, might have
people,
something to do with you.
yeah, that might have something to do with it. But it gets me thinking into all of these different ways of a little bit more empathy and understanding to other people,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
uh, what they value and what they need and how that
Yeah.
changes. Because my core values have changed, maybe not immensely, but like after becoming a mom, my core values changed. Things
Well,
that
I
I,
would say they're defining themselves better.
yeah, or they're they're shifting, or you, where in an I it was just my husband and I,
Mhm.
I very much so value my family. That looked different time allocation wise. Then now we've added a human, we've added a person.
That you're 100% responsible for.
Right. So, which is also, um,
Trust
oh,
me, I didn't even have 9 months to prepare.
right.
I
Yes. I
I
know now we're
literally
kind
called
of
my
like,
mom and said, "Tomorrow, I'm getting a baby at Panera. Can you please show up?"
wait,
Um,
wait, wait. Can we touch on, can the name of this podcast be I'm getting a baby at Panera? Uh,
from that day forward, my mother was like, "It's Panera. That's where they hand out babies."
the Panera, it's bagels and babies. Is it like a monthly like
No,
event?
it was a private adoption, and my lawyer said, "You can meet wherever you want." And she said, because I said, "Why don't we just buy you dinner?" And because we'd already met her at least once, and
Yeah.
she and her boyfriend had taken us to this Japanese steakhouse, and that's where we met our son, who's 9 week old. And she was convinced, and she already signed the papers, and so we just literally, our lawyer's like, "All you have to do is just." The papers are signed, everything's done, the lawyers are done, all the paperwork is finished. Just take custody of the child. And
Your
so,
baby at
yeah,
Panera.
yeah.
That's
So
incredible.
before we left Baltimore, we went and stood in front of Panera and made sure we got one more family photo.
You got a baby. But what's interesting because you had said this when you're younger, right? So you're getting married, you got married on the younger side. You, in your mind, becoming a mother was it. Like
Oh,
that was
yeah.
your purpose and that was your life's work. Then you also noted that there were some challenges. My son's an IVF baby, so we also had our
Okay.
own,
Yeah. Hmm.
situation. Um, so then you noted that you had some challenges. So how did that, what you thought you were wanting and what you thought you needed to do, how did that then impact? Okay, well then my journey looked nothing like I thought. Like,
I feel like absolutely everything I think is like, it's not going to turn out the way I think. So I'm
yeah,
learning at 57 to say, "Ooh, I wonder what's going to happen," because it never turns out the way I think it's going to. Um, yeah, just in a microcosm, I was raised that my mother and my dad met at 10th grade and got married at 19 and had me at 23. My sister and her husband met in 10th grade, got married at 19, and she was pregnant with her first, who was pregnant with her second.
oh my God.
um, my niece is pregnant with her second. And my sister was pregnant with her first at my wedding, and I'm
Yeah.
5 years older. Okay. So the culture that I was in was very much, this is what women do. We get married and we have children. And even as a college student and before I went to seminary, my mother would, and this is no shade on my mom, she was an amazing woman. But I think she thought she was trying to be hopeful. She would set a place at holiday tables for the man that God was going to provide for me. And so there was an empty seat at the table, which the message I received was always one of lack.
Yeah.
Something's missing. And so I actually married very late for my family. I married at
Yeah. Yeah.
27.
I know you laughed and I was like, young, because
There's a story
hey,
there. Yeah. Now
that's
I look back at people who are 27. I'm like, don't you want to wait a little while? It's like 30
yeah.
sounds good because
Yeah.
you're not a full grown human yet, And so I look at my son and he's like, I'm never getting married. I'm like, no problem. Right. It's like by the time you decide you want to, hopefully it'll be late enough that you've actually grown up.
Yeah.
And you know who you are. Now, there's nothing bad about growing up together and figuring out who you are together. You just need the tools to do it. So for me, getting married that late and then being obese and then saying, well, we're brand new pastor. My husband's brand new pastor at church in Baltimore. Didn't want to try. And then when we finally started trying, it just wasn't happening. Little did I know, I was like in perimenopause.
Mm,
And so when I had gastric bypass surgery, you have to wait 18 months. Well, you don't have to, but they tell you your body is in starvation mode and you're being malnourished. Please wait
and then
18 months.
surgery and cuts
Well, a
and
lot of it is nutrition wise because
yeah.
they don't want the baby to suffer and they don't want you to suffer. So by the time I waited 18 months, I was 39 and tried hard. I actually got pregnant one time and had a miscarriage and just couldn't get pregnant again. And I was having overnight hot, waking up in the middle of the night with hot flashes. Like I had to keep pajamas by the bed. So finally, I went to a guy to talk about IVF, and he sat there and looked at me and said, you have a 13% chance of a live birth with IVF.
Which yeah,
And I'm
that's
like, well, that sucks.
yeah.
And he goes, your eggs are old. And like, this guy has no bedside manner
Yeah.
whatsoever. But I don't,
That's
it's like he sold it straight, right? There was no
yeah,
question.
I guess
And
in the long run, it's like,
yeah.
okay,
So by the
about you.
time we hit the car in the parking lot, I looked at my husband and I said, adoption's 100%,
Yep.
right? This is a superpower that I have. I move forward and
Yeah.
I look for, I'm always looking for the answer. How can we get out of whatever situation we're in? And I said, adoption is 100%. And this is another piece of my life that prepared me. The kids that lived next door to me were both adopted. Because I told you there were 30 people in my senior class. In our Korea Baptist mission, there were 7 of us that were all the same age. It was like the biggest class they'd had in a long time. And so of those 7, 2 were adopted
Uh-huh.
and also had siblings who were adopted. My best friend was adopted. So I just kind of felt like adoption felt normal to me.
Yep.
And so, yeah, being able to say, I don't need to go through all of that. It's a lot of money. There's no guarantee. And 13% chance doesn't sound great. And there's babies out there. So yeah, that's what we decided to do.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think just a testament too of life can be so beautiful even if if it goes nothing according to plan. Like, and it usually doesn't. And I think that's I work a lot of times on with health and fitness and a lot of clients, and they're like, I want to get to point B, and I'm like, okay, great, we can figure out a very systematic way to get there. But I also want to point out
Mm.
that point B that you have right now in your head probably isn't going to be the point B it ends up being. It's going to be like
Yeah.
B 2.5, like like B 2.0.
Yeah.
You have to work with that mindset as well. And I think that the work that you're also doing with consistently going back to who you are and what matters, because I think it's really
Mhm.
easy, especially as life's moving really fast, right? Things are moving 1,000 miles an hour. We are all just jam packed with a lot of different things. I think it's easy to forget about what we actually care about.
Oh, well, and you get caught up in it. I mean, I went to work. Then that's the end of the story is not just the adoption, but it's also I tried to stay home. It's
Mm,
miserable.
yeah, didn't get
And
I get that.
because guess what? I am a businesswoman. I am a leader. I have a brain. I'm constantly fixing things and staring at a kid. I mean, I even did like the cloth diapers and everything. And I was singing Brian Adams, everything I do for you. I'm like, can I get out of this situation?
You're like,
So
do
I
I
just
still
want to
have to do
say,
it though?
yes,
Like,
but I want to say to all the mothers out there because like for me, it's like, I was like, I don't want to be at work because I don't fit in there, but at the same time, I don't fit in at home either. So I felt like I had no place to fit in, which is another reason I got on the path that I am now on.
Yeah.
But because I'm not free thinker does not fit in well at a big institution like a big university, right?
Mhm.
We stir the pot, turn things over too much. But I just want to say to anybody listening, if you feel like you don't fit in there or there, you might have a third way, and always look for that third way. And if staying home with a baby is not what brings you joy, even though having the baby brings you joy, and wanting to watch that individual blossom and grow into a human being that could potentially change the world brings you joy, pursue that, but also pursue the things that make you the kind of person that could help them blossom into that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I landed. Was I said, I have to be the kind of woman that's going to help this young man grow into something that could, somebody that could change the world, even if it's just on this block, right? And I just need to be that person for him. And of course, then we had no ADHD in our family, and we had to learn all about that. And it's just been this, everything about it has been so much bigger and so much more than we expected, and so much more beautiful than we expected. And watching children grow is a beautiful thing. I actually relate to them better when they can have philosophical conversations.
Yep.
My husband's good at the let's go to the swing set. I'm like,
Yep.
it just goes back and forth. Can we do something else? I mean, it's just so knowing this is, you're right, going back and knowing yourself, honoring who you are gives you not just the authority to do it, but it helps you follow your convictions and your passions. And then
Mhm.
it gives you the confidence to say, this is how I can show up for you and you and you and you and do it well.
Yep. Yeah. And I relate to that so much because we obviously worked very tirelessly to have our son. And a lot
Yeah.
of people were shocked that I didn't stay home. They're like, but you work so hard for it. And I'm like, correct. And I love him to the ends of the earth. But another one, and going through this exercise, like for me, curiosity and ever learning is
Mhm.
a big core value
Oh,
of mine.
yeah.
And the way that I do that is working.
Yeah.
And so that actually brings me a lot of fire and passion and excitement. And when I spend some time doing that, I get to go be a better mom, and I
You
get to show
bet.
up present for him, excited, a more fulfilled version of myself. And so for me,
Yes.
I sort of felt like staying home, if, to stay home, I'd give him a kind of shitty version all the time,
Yep.
checked out and stressed and,
Yeah.
you know, fraught. And because I get to do things that I love that bring me fulfillment and joy most of the time, we all have our
Oh,
days.
yeah.
When I do get to see him at the, after he gets home, or I'm amped. I am amped and ready. And I feel like the time that he gets from me is 100%
Mm.
versus if I was just there. I get it. I get it. And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, people were surprised. They're like, why though? Like, you really work so hard. I'm like, yes, I also am a human. Uh,
Yeah. But oh gosh, okay, y'all listening to this, you
yeah.
need to understand how important what she's saying is. And just as a side note, if you haven't yet given her 5 stars, you need to scroll down and do it now. Just pause and go down and give her 5 stars, because she's giving you some gold nuggets here. Because what people were looking at and seeing as the goal was not your goal.
No,
And you mentioned, the point on the horizon, I want to get to point B. A lot of times it's so far out there. You live in the desert, right? So
yep.
far out there, it's like this mirage. And we think we know what that is. And you get halfway there and you realize that doesn't look what I thought it was. And then you get 3/4 of the way there and you're like, that is not even a town. It's not
Yeah.
even
You're like,
not
I
what
think
we
I'm hallucinating. Yeah.
yes, this is not what I wanted. And but we still have to set those goals. But just because somebody else looks down the road and sees a mountain doesn't mean it's not a building that you see. I mean, it's so be that's why I mean my podcast is called Stand Tall and Own It, right? It's like
Yes.
you,
Go and
you
listen.
need to be thanks. You need to be willing to just live as you. And I get confirmation about this almost on a daily basis. And last night I actually cried with this woman telling me how just having conversations with me makes her go home and study and makes her go home and grow. And I'm like,
Because we
oh,
all
that's
need those
just
people
amazing.
sometimes. This is all ding, ding, dinging. I mean, like sometimes we need the help of a medical professional. Sometimes we need the help of
Yes.
a therapist or a coach or a peer or a mentor or a friend. We're not, I am a huge believer. We're not meant to go at this alone. No
Oh,
one is
no.
meant to be on an island, even the most introverted of human beings.
Right.
no one is meant to do this thing alone. Uh,
No.
and just that change of perspective sometimes, or I can definitely see that because some people just need that release of simply just saying things out loud and
Mhm.
having someone to be that sounding board, like reignites that passion.
Mhm.
I think it's just sometimes like the simplest of things can make really big impacts. And like I like that's what you were saying too. With I just started on my journey with my core value exercises because it's going to change, and
Yeah.
it could be years as you're refining and tweaking, and
Mhm.
then things can be completely knocked off their rocker sometimes when something happens. And that ever evolvement, I think people get kind of stuck with, well, I said I wanted this, so I have to do it.
Oh,
Changing
you
your mind.
wouldn't do that to anybody else. You
Exactly. I'm like, well, would you tell that to me? No.
no.
Um, and I think that's a huge asset to something like how you work with people of there's going to be things that are inherently within you,
Yeah.
and those can be your guiding lights, and everything else can kind of like, orb around it, shift around it.
Mhm.
But it really truly just like even within the 20 minutes that I sat down last night, I was like, whoa, like if I can just take a step back and pause for any like decision, does this align?
Mhm.
Yes or no? Because so many times I think I make a decision, snap judgment like quickly because I'm busy, and
Mhm.
it ends up not actually feeling good.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, probably because it's not
Now
in
you
alignment
know why.
with who I am as a person.
Yeah.
Uh, so just some like introspection on ourselves. I think we're running so fast; it's really hard.
Mhm.
It's hard to do that. But I really recommend everyone goes and does that exercise. It's free.
Mhm.
I grabbed it right off your website,
Yeah,
and
it's like this button right above my head. You
yeah,
can't miss it. It says
yeah,
free core values exercise.
click it. And then you sit down and you have all these revelations about yourself. It's incredible. It's amazing. I love it. Um, I want to be mindful of your time. I know all schedules are just really, really crazy, but where can people find you? Um, Sites, socials, podcasts, all the things. Where can we send people?
Well, I am the intentional optimist because Andrea Johnson is very, very common. So I actually picked a name that, and that is actually I also have the 6 tenets of intentional optimism. So that's part of my business. But you can find me at the intentional optimist. I almost said Andrea Johnson, theintentionaloptimist.com, or on LinkedIn and Instagram, especially. I will respond to your DMs. If
Fun.
you just tell me that you heard me on Sarah's podcast, say, "Hey, big tent person here," and I'll know that you're not spam, and I'm happy to respond. You can email me. I'm also my podcast is called Stand Tall and Own It. I'm literally planned out to episode 200. We've been doing this a while, and I interviewed over 75 leaders, women leaders, so that you could kind of hear ideas of how you could be a leader in ways that you might not expect. But I switched the name of it to Stand Tall and Own It back in September because I was like, it's time. I can't just interview other people. I have to actually put my own stuff out
Yeah,
there. And
you have so much to give. You have so much to give.
well, thank you. That voice of not everybody wants to hear your opinion is very loud back
I
there.
want to hear your opinion. Should I just send you like a recording of that exact, or like a little button? You can click
Once
it.
a week, yeah, a button,
I want
yeah.
to hear your opinion.
Opinion. What's your opinion, Andrea? But you'll get it on my podcast. And I
Mm,
just recorded yesterday. The one for next week is the grief associated with all the changes that we make and
mm.
how we need to be willing to sit in that and walk through it because it actually makes us stronger. So there's my podcast. It's also on YouTube if you want to see my hands going everywhere and all kinds of stuff. But I love what I do, and that's my personal work or my private work. But I also, as a Maxwell certified speaker trainer and coach, I work in companies. I can come in and do, because we didn't even talk about DISC communication, behavioral analysis. But you can get your own assessment. I can work with you individually on that. But I go into companies, I do workshops. I do DISC workshops, leadership workshops, masterminds. I do all kinds of stuff. So I can do that virtually, or I love to travel. As I've said, I grew up overseas. So please reach out. I would, and let me know what was helpful on this, because Sarah's given you some good things to think about as well. And I would just love to know what your core values are.
Yes, go tell her. Go do it and tell her because it's awesome.
And if the one page is not enough, if you need more help, I do have a digital course. At the bottom of that page, it should have information on the digital course if you do the free page. But then I also am doing what I'm calling an alpha test I can't decide if I want to do group coaching for it because sometimes personal values it's just it's very personal, but I'm doing at about like, I don't know, really reduced price for coaching calls along with the course. And
Yeah.
you can just contact me if you're interested in that. I'm still looking for about 15 more people to do that before I
Yeah.
make a decision on how I'm going to move forward.
I will link this all out, make sure everyone gets all of the goodies and the info. But I just appreciate you, your openness, your
Thank
spunk.
you.
You are
Yeah.
so fun.
Funky.
Spunky. I know. I feel like I am you. You are me. We are all each other.
Yeah.
It, I am with you, but I appreciate you. Everyone, go take a look, a peek, a listen to all that Andrea has to offer, and let either of us know if you have questions. Andrea, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank
And
you.
you're in the tent now, so I always say once you're in, you can't leave. So you're in now.
Yeah, my
And
boss used to say, let's just get the camel's nose under the tent. And I'm like,
yeah,
no, I'm fully in the tent.
see, I continue to
Here
make
I
my tent
am.
bigger and bigger and bigger, and all are welcome. And you're in now, so
Love it.
thank you for sitting down with me. I appreciate it.
My privilege.
Thank you for tuning in to the Welcome to My Tent podcast. I hope you had as much fun listening as I do recording. I am so happy to have you here, and see you next episode.